Those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. This is Success with Srini.
On the podcast today, I'm answering a question that has come in from a long-time listener of my radio shows and now a long-time listener of this podcast. And the question is, as first-generation immigrant with parents alone in India, there is always a mental tussle and self-judging about them. Due to constraints, parents are not able to travel to us. At times, mind thinks that I am being selfish and not being there for my parents. But practically, for kids, my kids want to be in US for their future. How does one deal with this? Wonderful question. Thank you for trusting me with this question, and I will do my best to answer this. I'll make an attempt. There is no right or wrong answer to this, so I'm going to share the philosophy behind this, and you can apply this philosophy if you think it makes sense. Now, this is a challenge. This is a problem. When you leave your parents and when you are far away, it doesn't matter. You are in America, you are in Canada, Singapore, whichever part of the world you are in, doesn't matter. You are like 100 miles away from where your parents are. It's still an issue. Distance in general is an issue, and I'm going to cover that. But then, here is how I see it, because I myself have gone through it and I'm going through it. So this question is very close to my heart. So, each one of our assets, every asset you have in your life today, will eventually become your liability. Your parents, at one point in time, were your assets. And they are now, due to age, everything else that's happening, we all age and we'll start losing our functions. We become a liability. So they were assets to begin with, and now they're turning into a liability. Be any possession you have a house, you have a car, anything that you have that you think now is an asset is going to soon turn into a liability. Your emotions that you think are your assets will turn into a liability. And whatever you think in your mind is an asset, which, by the way, your parents are an asset, and this was a programming that was done a long time ago. And this is there in the mind from the beginning because they gave birth to us and they raised us. We want to become, as we see them becoming a liability, not to us, for themselves. They're not able to do the basic functions and they're going down and they don't have the energy and they're aging. And we have to do everything because it's an asset in our mind. We will do whatever we can to protect that asset. Every asset becomes a liability, and you'll do everything in your capability to protect that asset. And you'll expense a lot along the way. So that's the point. Hopefully, that point I could convey across. Every asset, let's take that principle one more time, and I'll give you one more analogy on this. An asset, as we all started as kids, we were given some skills, some values, and some beliefs by our parents. And we had some talents. They did nourish our talent. And there was an investment they made. It's not the right way to put it, but you get the idea. There was an investment that was made into us. And with time, and as we became older and we started seeing life and we acquired the necessary understandings of this world, our job is to turn that investment into equity for them. It's a bad way to say this, but you get the idea. To turn this into equity for them. Now, one of the ways we turn this into equity is that we take whatever they have given us and we give that to our children. So we transfer our passions, we transfer our things that we could not do, but our parents wanted us to do, but then we couldn't do, so we want our children to do. So that we can turn them, our children, into assets. So I see, this is the question you're asking, right? So that is why you go into Bible says a simple concept. I'm going to sum it up in one line. Leave and cleave. So you leave your parents and you cleave to people who come into your life. So your responsibility is to your children. Clearly, Bible says that. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine who has some deep understanding about Vedas and all, and we chat a lot. And I was asking this question, and he said, even Rig Veda says that, your responsibility is to your children. Okay. Now the question becomes what happens to our parents? And the assets And they thought that they got an asset, they gave birth to us, and they instilled the talents and skills into us, and then they thought that they're going, with time, we're going to become equity, right? That means we take that equity, whatever, and we see the world, and then turn that equity into assets, and that asset will be our children. But then, along the way, they did not realize that they will become a liability. They didn't want to. Seriously, they didn't want to. But they start to see, hey, I'm slowing down, I'm aging, I'm sick, and I think I'm troubling my child. I don't want to tell anything that's happening with me. But the way the nature is, they can't hide it from you. It's a matter of a day or two before you come to know. They could delay this, but then each and every emotion that is causing pain to them sooner or later will come to you. So this becomes a game that you have to play within your mind. What is the time that you would like to spend with your parents, and how can you tell yourself that whatever time you spend with them is enough? Now, there are two parts to this question also. One is your desire to go spend time with them. Okay? That is completely controlled by you. But they are fine, they're able to take care of themselves. They had a good life, they're living a good life, it's fine. But they're sick and they're losing their abilities, and you don't have anybody to help you and support you, then it becomes your responsibility. Bible talks about this. Every other scripture, every other philosophy that I have studied, at least in my understanding, talks about taking care of parents. Let's look into this with a different angle. Back in the day, while I was growing up, children were supposed to grow up and take care of parents. So parents necessarily did not have a 401k or retirement or social structure and all that. I live in America now, so there is some social structure to this, some social security coming in, some other things, there are programs built in to take care of older parents and all those things. But in the structure that I was raised, in the times that I was born and raised, the only structure that was there is that parents will transition and live with their children, and they will transition out from there. So there was no concept of care homes, old age homes and all that. That dynamic has shifted, that dynamic has changed. And because the way the world operates now, it probably makes sense to look into those options. But then if they are demanding that they want you and they want to be with you and there's nobody else who can serve, and you yourself want to serve, then that's a different equation altogether. So you have to somehow create the balance. I want to point out one thing. Every time you do something, it comes at an expense. So every time you see something is amplified or something is having incredible amount of visibility or success, a function of life that is looking good, that means it has drawn the energy from somewhere else. And the chances are whatever it has drawn the energy from is now weak. So if you focus on parents, your children will be compromised, given, no doubts about it. If you focus on your children to a large extent, your parents could also be compromised. But it's a balance that you have to create. It's a mindset. Now, one angle, one core philosophy I want to share with you that I have used multiple times. Every interaction I have with anyone is my last interaction. Every conversation is the last conversation. That's my mindset. So every time I see my relatives, my parents, my friends, even you, if I meet you, I have spoken to you, I think in my mind that was the last conversation. That is how I approach every interaction, every discussion, even every consultation. And that gives me a perspective. Whatever I have to say, I said. Whatever I had to do, I did in that space. I usually never say I'm going to deal with this 3 months from now, 4 months from now. My personal mindset is that I want to live, for 100 years, but then I'm okay if tomorrow is my last day. Or today is my last day. I'm okay with it. So I work out and I go to gym, I work out and do all the things as if I want to live for 100 years. I want to be strong, healthy and all that. But then I'm okay if life ends. That's perfectly fine because those are the things we do not control. I'm going to talk about this tomorrow on the podcast, but you get the idea. See, with time, every relationship reverses. Your parents become your children. You as a child will have to become a parent. So as a child, there comes a point where you have to become a parent and say, this is what I can do, this is what I cannot do. That's the level of understanding you have to bring in. And there are multiple different approvals that you have to take and to do certain things. And sometimes you have to force some approvals too from your side. So all that is nothing but balance. And all that is your ability to handle yourself, not anybody else. So, can you turn your parents who are declining in age from a liability into an equity? That could be a question you may have. The chances are no. Mostly no. It's very rarely I have seen that a caregiver who has given tremendous amount of care was expecting that the old man will become young or the old woman will become young. That means the parents would become young and they'll overcome all their challenges. It doesn't work that way. And that's how life is. The most unfortunate thing of caregiving is that no matter what you do, they will go. So this feeling that I am not able to see my parents will eventually end up in a situation where my parents are no more around. I hate to say this, but this is the truth. This is how life works. So you have to do what you have to do. You have to create this balance. And this is the mindset I would use. So go spend time with your parents as much as you can. Understand that they had their life. If they are demanding that you serve them, then you have to. There's no way out. And there's nobody else. You don't trust anybody else. You have to. If they're okay, if you can get it, if they can be helped through some enlisting the services of other people around, then that's fine. But what I've seen consistently happen is after a long time living alone on their own, most parents would love to spend the last time with their kids. And that is something that you may choose to accommodate. And that is going to come at a cost. And that cost is very difficult for many people to bear. So that's why they, become sometimes emotionless dealing with those situations. Hopefully my analogies and my answer is helpful. If it is, let me know. That's all for now. I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Stay tuned. Bye now.